African futures are made of expectations, dreams, fears, histories, and contestations. Future-making is the process of turning these into politics, plans, and spatial transformations.
Yani ni kwamba ni malengo yangu ni kwamba baadaye nipate shamba langu mwenyewe kubwa na mimi nianze kulima kwa ajili ya nini?
Aji Daudi Mutui. Asito hiyo nabi harani ongishu na yelo namali ne ke mari ongishu ke garara na gara nyanga ngishu ngojit ngara gi alame yoro do. Yolo nara rati nabi hara nara rabe gias ne do ngishu.
Nasababisha sana kupoteza muda. Sasa najua muda ni mali sana. Unapotukosa muda hata maendeleo kidogo na yanarudi nyuma.
Future Rural Africa is the fascinating topic of our collaborative research center, but it is also quite challenging. It is challenging because the future is not directly accessible, but only insofar as it becomes an issue in the present. Africa is seen by many as the continent of the future, where these processes of future making unfold in the present, and rural Africa is the place where this is unrolled and observable for our research. So what we are trying to do in the CRC is that we try to decipher these processes and plans and practices of future making and the way how people in Africa envision their own futures.
We are taking the world as it is now for granted. What we tend to ignore is that the world that we live in is one amongst many possible worlds, and that the world we live in is with us because other worlds were made unfeasible.
The goal of the newly created Collaborative Research Centre, formed through various universities across Europe and Africa, is understanding future-making processes and the forces that shape these.
It is important for the principal investigators to come up with a structure that reflects, in a way, a very timely topic, namely the development of rural Africa and the conflicts that arise by, for example, intensification of agriculture versus natural conservation, and how this impacts on the socio-economical structure of the society.
There also has to be very clear rules on land tenure and use of land so that you don't run into difficulties down the line with a group of villagers or people saying this was our land. And so you need clarity and you need clear rules and the right regulatory system that facilitates investments.
No treatment of future making ought to avoid the worldwide significance of the penetration of agrarian livelihoods by non-agrarian interests and the implications of that for the conditions under which futures are made.
The inclusion of African researchers in a CRC that has the goal to learn something about Africa seems to me unavoidable. You have to do that because you need people who have a local perspective and who know much better what's going on in their country and in their areas than we know from Europe.
Working here in Germany on African solutions and African challenges is not enough. No? You really need to cooperate and create joint knowledge with your African partners and institutes, because this might then be a basis for joint activities, collective action and legitimacy for cooperation.
The future will be determined by the definitions that borders have been given. Space and borders would always go together in determining the future use of land, which is very important for rural African communities. Future in this case of these rural communities are highly influenced by the definition that different actors put in these spatial reorganization processes.
For the conceptualization, we will go for two approaches. One is looking at the probabilities, and on the other hand, we're looking at the possibilities. Probabilities, it's the usual job for natural scientists. But the other side is, and this is new in let's say, research on future making, is that we want to combine this with the aspect of possibilities. And here we have to and want to include the aspects, the thinking, aspiration, expectations from the local people.
Visual language plays a crucial role in constructing, translating and communicating visions of the future. The Collaborative Research Centre tries to critically analyse these visual artefacts in policy papers, media or development plans, and their power in shaping contested futures in the present. This can be accomplished through reflections on paradigms and theories used in this interdisciplinary research, as well as through a continuous enhancement of methods. Of high importance will be methodological approaches that acknowledge the scientific validity of different perspectives on future making.
Well, science communication is an obligation in this kind of collaborative research centers. We are expected to communicate our findings.
The Collaborative Research Centre uses innovative ways of science communication, a science for and with society. Dialogue-based interactions and co-productions across continents are at the centre of it, trying to redefine the space where public and science meets. It involves the public in science-making itself, letting people take part in the process, fostering greater insight in the practices of knowledge creation. Visual modules targeting at broad, web and narrowcasting form the three main pillars of this communication strategy. The Collaborative Research Centre focuses on large-scale land use change and socio-ecological transformation development corridors in Tanzania, Kenya and Namibia. With a unique set of partner organisations across the African continent, joint knowledge creation takes a centre stage.
Farmers have always been perhaps the most sensible people and much more closer to nature than we have been. I often say that a farmer knows instinctively that if you take something from the earth today, you need to put something back to be able to return to harvest. Because if you don't do that, the cycle doesn't continue.
The major conflict is not between dreams and reality, but between dreams and other dreams. So that reality, so to speak, is actually produced by the contestation between dreamscapes. So the real is actually a kind of sedimentation of the battlefield of dreams.
Africa is moving towards creating its own modernity. This will affect development in rural areas as well, potentially creating more inclusion and genuine participation that will give the power to shape both the process and outcome over transforming future Africa.